No role plays, no conference calls, no BS. Chris and Lorenzo share 4 decades of combined experience to help you become a more effective leader. This is Hacking Your Leadership.
Welcome to Hacking Your Leadership. I'm Chris.
And I'm Lorenzo.
And Lorenzo, on this episode, I want to talk about an article that was put out that I saw last week by Microsoft's Chief People Officer. Her name's Kathleen Hogan. And the article she put out on Fast Company talks about how we are experiencing a global human energy crisis. And I thought that looks interesting when I saw it, because we've touched on this before. We've had conversations about managers and employees feeling burnt out, and that's been a problem for a long time. It just seems to be growing, getting worse and not getting better. 53% of managers report they're burnt out. 48% of employees report they're burnt out. There just seems to be a lot more expectations, a lot more to do, and seemingly a lot less resources with which to do those things. And it will lead to this number growing. So to put it in the context of a global human energy crisis, it kind of piqued my interest a little bit, because it shows that this is not just it can be localized to one country or one subset of an industry. If it's worldwide, it implies there's something else at play here. And I thought it'd be a good idea to talk about this, because I think a lot of leaders struggle with it themselves, and they struggle with seeing it happen to their people and not knowing how to combat it, especially if they're dealing with it themselves.
Yeah, I think it's a good topic to have. We talk a lot about engagement and connection and, inspiration, motivation, all these types of things. And I think that at the heart of it, those are really hard to accomplish if people just don't have the energy to be able to put into it. They don't have they haven't had their own batteries kind of refilled in a way that they can show up and be focused on the work and be thinking about ways that they can improve and have the confidence to take calculated risks. I think a lot of that is about energy. And I think that I've always said around energy, there's just people that bring energy to a room, and then people that kind of take energy out of a room, and that's kind of the positive, negative types of feels sometimes. And then there's kind of just the energy of the room, which is kind of just that even flow amongst how things normally are. But I think what we're talking about, and what she's talking about this article, is just that even flow energy is decreasing, and it's lowering collectively. And I think that it's something that has to be considered because it's going to have an impact on the ability to truly kind of motivate, inspire, develop people, and do that type of work from a leadership standpoint. There's kind of always that element when you lead teams of people that you're going to have those that are kind of like the go-getters, and they're driven to show up every day and put forth an effort. And sometimes that's overused. Sometimes they really they're pushing too hard, and they're kind of putting themselves out front and not taking care of their team. And then you have those that are really wanting the next job, and those that want to just do great at the job that they have. You kind of have all these things that are going on. But when the collective energy is reducing, I think that has an impact on the ability to get work done, to understand those on your team, to spend more time maybe in dialogue and conversations and connections, understanding kind of where they're at with that energy element, what's going on in their lives, in their world, things around them, relationships that are happening, anything at all that you can gain that's going to be helpful in knowing where to meet them, and whether they need the time to be pushed along, to be pulled along, to give them some space, to navigate those elements of just the people piece of this. I think energy is a big part of it.
I think about, and you pardon the sports analogy here, but I think about how, I played water polo when I was in high school, and started to when I was in college too. And I went from being, I would say, pretty good when it came to my peer group in a swimming pool when I was in high school. And then when I went to college, I went to a college that is NC2A Division I for water polo. And it was like playing with a different breed of person. They were so much better. And so I went from, playing a lot, like playing every minute of every game, to really not playing at all. And because of that, the practice schedule became significantly more daunting and burning me out more quickly. It wasn't a different practice schedule than I had prior to it. It was the same number of hours, the same expectation, but it was burning me out, and it hadn't before. And I realized that the reason why is because I didn't feel like I was getting anything from it. It was I was working just as hard, but I didn't get that moment of being able to play in the game and have, see the fruits of my labor, so to speak. I think this is happening to more and more people across the world. I think as prices rise and the cost of living goes up, and there's the ability to own a home in a lot of places is much further out of reach for a lot higher percentage of people than it used to be in the past. I think there's a lot of people out there who are just thinking like, well, it's worth putting forth all of this effort, or it was worth putting forth all of this effort because it was going towards something. Even if it was hard in the moment, I see the future, and I know I have to do this in order to get the future that I want. And when you go from feeling that way to thinking, well, the future that I want isn't even possible, whether or not it's true. And in some cases it's not true, and it's just a perception. In other cases it is true. If you think the future that you want isn't possible, it becomes a lot harder to sustain whatever that level of energy or effort or work is towards something, because you feel like, well, what's the point? Like it's not fun anymore. It's not, there's no payoff anymore. I think that's happening a lot.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that there's just a lot going on collectively in the world, and the impact that it's having. I think of just conversations I've had recently with people across many different industries in the workforce, and just like the impact that kind of some of these layoffs are having, that some of the layoffs are having on, whether it's spouses, friends, partners, children, parents, things like that, and how that in itself is just becoming, okay, like, where do we go from here? What's going to happen? I see it on LinkedIn constantly. I see way more announcements of continuing to change, in the workforce in a negative direction as far as, the reductions. And I do see the celebrations of people getting other new jobs. But those are things in my opinion that, that if you don't have that stability in around you, and you're thinking about that and you're worried about that, I think it has two different pieces. It's like, number one, you're like, well, I hope this doesn't happen to me, and what do I got to do to make sure that I'm good? But also, like, how are we going to plan going forward? Like, either what else needs to be done, or how long will this last? Like, it just adds this layer of just unanswered questions that I think has an impact. And you take that on top of things that we're seeing in, like, housing and rental increases, on top of inflation. Like, there's all these things that are having this big impact on people in general, and some more than others. But I think those that I spend most of my time with, everybody has a story and example of whether it's the unexpected cost increases, or just the cost to just live where you live and get to where you're going, like all those types of things. These become conversations and problems that people are spending time thinking about and trying to solve for, and that can be a distraction to putting forth all of their energy into wanting to show up in a job and in a role and really put forth their full effort. Like, and again, you just, as a leader, I think you have to be aware of that. You have to understand that. You have to look at that, and you have to spend some time thinking about, how do you want to approach it? How do you want to spend your time talking to your people in conversations? How do you want to have maybe some more grace or some empathy? Or are there spaces where you can bring up some of these things that are going on and asking people, how are they feeling? What's happening there? letting them know that you know that it's a thing, and that if they need support or help, that you have resources organizationally or things that you could try to do your best to help them out with. Like, I think it's such a big conversation that needs to be had right now, as a part of the connection that's needed with the teams.
Right. And you can't necessarily trust the responses that you're getting on the surface. Like, I think about the meme of the dog sitting at the table and the room is burning around him and he's saying, I'm fine, everything's fine. There's this, there can be this kind of habit or trend or kind of like inclination for your people that if you ask them how they're feeling, which is important, you should be checking in with your people, asking them how they're feeling. There could be an inclination for them to say, I'm fine, everything's fine, because they don't want to appear burned out, because they don't want to feel like that they're lowering their job security even further, right? They don't want to come off as like they can't handle this. But if they're to the point where they are saying that they feel burnt out, that they feel like there's a problem, then there has already been a problem for a while, because they've already passed the stage of saying everything's fine when in their mind they know it's not fine. Now they're willing to actually say it. So at that point, they're just kind of like, I'm done. Like, I can't do this anymore. And at that point, you as the leader should have known that 6 months ago, right? Not right then when they're saying it. And so,
but I also think, though, I'll add this, though, I think that there's a lot of leaders that are in the same boat.
Oh, of course.
And it's hard. It's hard.
They're
hard
fumbling
to see
with
that.
their own oxygen mask on the plane, and you're expecting them to make sure their
Exactly.
people's oxygen masks are on.
Absolutely. No, it's tough, because again, if you're blinded by that, the only things that you're going through yourself, it's hard to even recognize that in others or be attentive to that because you're distracted. So, like, I think it's just an overall thing that we need to talk more about.
Yeah, I think it's important to have these conversations and to have them over and over and over again, though, because just having them once and then saying, okay, I checked that box off, my people are good. It's like, no, that doesn't mean they are. You need to know them well enough to be able to read between the lines, to see the nuance of what's going on, to be able to watch how they're working, their productivity levels, their commitment to work, their happiness while they're at work, for lack of a better word. And seeing if what they exhibit while they're at work aligns with what they're telling you about how they're feeling about work. And there's no way to do that after a single conversation. You just have to have a lot of touch points across a long enough timeline where you're looking for a trend in the wrong direction. And it's really difficult to notice a problem in a moment or a snapshot. You have to look at an upward or a downward trend. If you're doing this with your people all the time, you will notice it if there's a trend. But again, to your point, Lorenzo, if there is a difficulty from your standpoint to just get through your own day because maybe your leader's not doing that for you, then it can be a lot harder to put that on your daily kind of workload. But I will tell you, I think leaders who do this find that their own workload seems less daunting. We've talked in depth about the idea of that the most fulfilling work is the work that we do in service of others. This is work in service of others. And if you're talking about what leadership is, the tactical elements that you have to do as part of your job as a leader get put on the back burner in order to do a lot of this kind of work. But this is the work. This is the work of a leader, is to kind of go through these inventories of your talent and to make sure that they are getting the support and the help that they need in order to just feel like they have the support and the help that they need. Even if there's nothing you actually end up doing, it's just making your people know that support system is there. That can go a long way to not just helping them, but to making you as the leader feel like when you put your head on the pillow at night that you did work that day, that you put forth effort that was in service of others. That work will be much more fulfilling than just, sending out 7 emails and making sure an Excel spreadsheet is updated and, the kind of stuff that you think you have to do. The old adage of, I was so busy doing work that I forgot to do my work. This is where you can kind of help your own self feel more fulfilled in the work you're doing when you're trying to help your people.
Absolutely. And with that, it brings us to this episode's 1-minute hack. But first, a few words from our sponsors.
All right, for this episode's 1-minute hack, here's what I want you to do. Get out your pen and paper and write down a list of all your people, and you're going to check them off as you have conversations with them. Everybody knows the old, college commencement address from the military person who says, start every day with making your bed because it's accomplishing something and that leads to you accomplishing more. This is the exact same thing when it comes to helping your people get where they want to go or to accomplish goals. Maybe long or huge or long-term goals seem more out of reach for your people right now. Maybe it seems like what's the point of working towards something? There's nothing big to work for anymore. As the leader, it's your responsibility to do what you can to help them accomplish smaller goals if that's all that can be done in the moment. Helping your people accomplish smaller goals, even if it's let me increase the number of hours of work that you spend doing the thing that will get you more towards your long-term goal, as opposed to hours of work you spend a week doing things that are less likely to get you more towards your long-term goal. How can I get you time to be able to commit to making yourself better in this area? How can I help you learn a new skill? All these little things that you can do for your people are these little check boxes that can help them feel like they're not just treading water, keeping their head above water, doing the same thing every day that will then lead to them burning out. There's something that they're working towards. And if it's these big things that they don't feel are attainable, then you as the leader help them accomplish the little things that will lead to a sense of kind of renewed kind of invigoration when it comes to at least being able to get through the day and see kind of a light at the end of the tunnel. And that might lead to the ability to accomplish larger goals in the future as we move through this kind of period of uncertainty.
Yeah, I think it's a great 1-minute hack. And I think the intention just around not just connecting with people, but really, really kind of taking in the assessment and understanding of like what's going on and how are they feeling, not just about the work, but just in general. We keep talking about this evolution of leadership and the ability to have empathy and the ability to connect with people. And we talk also about like clarity is kindness and these things of being like being direct and being transparent in your dialogue. I see those two things coming together in that space around like Chris, like how are you doing? Like let me, like, again, the clarity piece, like, hey, this is something that's going on right now around us and in our lives and in my life and your life and those around it. And what I want to check in on is how you're feeling through all of this right now and how's your energy and are you feeling overwhelmed in some of these things here at work and what can we do? Because we do have responsibilities and obligations to get work done. Like that's a part of having a job and having these expectations. But I also know that there are things that may be outside of work that will have an impact on your focus and on your attention and on your capability to take on more responsibility or to really be here and be present in the moment. So like, let's talk through some of that. And again, that balancing of having the empathy to know that things are going on, but also the clarity of like, and we have a job to do. And these are things that, that we've got to solve together. I just think that conversations like that happening more and more often, I think will be for the betterment of everybody.
Yeah, I agree. I think when it comes to the conversations, how these conversations work when it comes to work itself, they should really be centered around where the priorities lie. So this is less about, taking inventory of the things your people are working on and, checking off boxes to say, oh, okay, you're working on this and this and this and this and this. It's more of a, hey, I notice you're working on this and this and this and this and this. I just want to make sure that you don't get burnt out. And so if some of these things have to take a back burner for the time being, these are the two things that can't take the back burner. These are the two things that are the priority. Everything else can take a back burner for a while if we need to focus on these one or two things. They can't all be a priority. When everything is a priority, nothing is a priority. And so as a leader, it's your job to provide clarity around where the absolute priorities are so that your people aren't burned out doing a lot of other things that might be able to take a back seat for a while.
Absolutely. And with that, it brings us to the end of this episode. This is Hacking Your Leadership. I'm Lorenzo.
And I'm Chris.
And we'll talk to you all next time.